Welcome back to Late Night Scrolling, the Canadian pop culture podcast hosted by producer Liz. And yes, we are chatting 2 days in a row because today Canadian Screen Award nominations dropped. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to Canada, wherever you are in this country. You are celebrating because today made history for so many shows across this country, so many films across this country. I know for me, I'm recording this at 1 p.m. Halifax time, but I have been up since the nominations dropped, looking over all these numbers, all of these incredible nominations that have come out. Folks, this is a monster of an award show. We're talking everything Canadian screen wrapped up in these awards. It's our Oscars, it's our Emmys, it's our Webbies, and it's all happening right now. So, if this is your first time following Canadian Screen Awards, this is your first time tuning into my coverage of Canadian Screen Awards, allow me to give you the disclaimer that I give every year, which is if you're expecting Oscars coverage, you will not get it here. Throw out all that American awards system theory out of your head. We are not in the same ballgame as the American award circuits, okay? Let me give you the total number of projects that entered for nomination because it is staggering. In film, 265 contenders were submitted for these awards, 81 feature films, 45 feature documentaries, and 139 short films. And across television and digital media, 433, yes, 433 titles were entered for consideration. That's 364 television titles and 69 digital media titles. Okay, we almost had enough television titles to watch a different one every day of 2024. Y'all, the number of hours of content that went into just creating these nominations is more than any one person could have watched on their own in a year. This is a staggering amount of CanCon to go through, and yet we've been able to boil it down to 158 awards, which include those special awards and the fan choice. That breaks down into 31 film categories, 110 TV categories, and 9 digital media categories. If you think that the Oscars is a lot to get through, y'all, welcome to the Canadian Screen Awards. We have a lot of work to do. If any commentator is telling you that they have seen every single thing nominated, they are lying to you. I do not believe a single person can handle watching all of the nominated content on their own. That is why newsrooms exist. That's why editorial teams exist, to take chunks and watch them and analyze them and create coverage and content for all of you. Alas, I am just one person who was up at 7 a.m. like the rest of the country to get these nominations. Technically, it was 8 a.m. Halifax time. I've been doing my best over the past year to follow these projects as they've been airing, and even I get confused about some of the nominations and who was eligible this year and who will be eligible next year. It gets very, very confusing. But 4 hours into looking at these nominations, y'all, the blue light glasses are saving me, the coffee is saving me, and I'm ready to talk with y'all about what we are getting from this year's nominees because I've got a lot of feelings about it. So we're going to break it down by looking at these big buckets: film, television, and digital media. And I can summarize my feelings about these buckets with a phrase that we all know and love: screaming, crying, throwing up. So first, let's scream about these film nominations because, y'all, I am confused. We have some good screams. We have some not so good screams. I'm feeling a lot of different ways about this, and I'm just going to be honest with all of you. One of my least favorite commentary points is when you say you think something was deserving of a nomination, and the response you get is, well, what nomination would you replace it with? Right now, I don't know what nomination I would replace in some of these categories, but I do still think there are a lot of snubs, and a lot of these numbers are not adding up for me. So let's go through them. Films with the highest number of nominations and the films in Best Motion Picture are apples and oranges, folks. These are not the same. First, let's talk about the films that received the highest number of nominations. You have Universal Language, you have The Shrouds, which is Cronenberg's Film of the Year, Diener 89, and Village Keeper, okay? But when you look at Best Motion Picture as a category, you have The Apprentice, Darkest Miriam, Gamma Rays, Universal Language, Village Keeper, and Who Do I Belong To? Now, there's some exciting stories within this that I want to point out. Specifically, two of these nominees are also nominated in the First Time Filmmakers category, which is one of my favorite awards that the Canadian Screen Awards gives out. And the two films that have that double nomination are Village Keeper and Who Do I Belong To? It's always great to see the First Time Filmmakers also make it into that Best Motion Picture category. Universal Language, 13 nominations. So exciting, but not at all surprising. This was Canada's entry into Best International Feature at the Oscars. This has been the film that has been dominating the conversation in Canada. So that's your caveat for all of the snubs that I think took place and how great I think all of these films are. They are. And I do stand by my opinions, but I do think we're in for a Universal Language suite this year, and honestly, it's so deserved. Rounding out that Best Motion Picture category, you have a major film that did play in Oscars, which is The Apprentice, which was a Canadian co-production. We've been screaming that from the rooftop since day one of Oscar season that The Apprentice is a Canadian co-pro and therefore is CanCon. A lot of people have been trying to argue about that on the internet. It is now done and dull. It is Canadian Screen Award nominated. It was really never an argument. I think people just like to pick apart the differences between the Canadian and American filmmaking industry, and like to that, I just say, my definition of CanCon, which is always contentious on the internet, if Canadians were a part of it, I think we should call it CanCon. Supporting people in this industry is more important than how we put barriers around it and define it. Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong now add Canadian Academy nominations alongside their Oscar Academy nominations. That phrasing wasn't quite right, but we're gonna roll with it. I really do wonder if they're going to win their categories, because those were some of the most outstanding performances of the year. And I'm not just saying that because they were nominated for Oscars, I'm saying that because it was like mind-blowing what they did in that film. Could this be Jeremy Strong's chance to take home an award because Kieran Culkin wasn't nominated? Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if they won, but I would be surprised if they showed up, because it's not often that like international A-list nominations travel in other than like the featured award recipients. But please know, if Sebastian Stan finds himself on a red carpet in which I am standing with the microphone, y'all are about to get the interview of a lifetime. I dare the universe, I dare the Canadian Academy to put Sebastian Stan in front of me on the red carpet. It will be the interview of my lifetime, and I'm sure it will be maybe the most memorable one of the night that he will have. Darkest Miriam is also a film that I've been watching specifically because Britt Lauer, yes, Helly R from Severance, is the lead in that film. I'm not surprised to see it here. I'm not surprised to see it do so well. I'm really happy to see Gamma Rays end up in this category, as well as picking up some additional nominations. This is a movie that cast young non-professional actors from immigrant countries, and it is so well done. It is such a cool and exciting film, so it's very cool to see it up in the ranks here. But talking about the films at large that received nominations, I'm scratching my head. I'll start with the easiest scratch of head moment before we go into all the snubs. I'm regularly confused at like this nomination period versus what is actually there. It doesn't matter how many times I read the rules and eligibility for the film categories. I always get confused when films that I think get snubbed actually end up getting nominated a year later. I can't tell if My Old Ass was not nominated or if it's going to be in the 2026 awards, even though it debuted in September. I also thought maybe Box Cutter would be here, but maybe Box Cutter is also going to compete next year. So those are two big question marks I have that I don't have the answers to right now. But there are a lot of films that, to be frank, I'm heartbroken about. Specifically, I Used to Be Funny, I think is one of the best Canadian films of the 2020s, and it received one nomination. One nomination. This is a film that was in the South by Southwest grand jury nominations, okay? This is a film that I think has so much character. I think it is so like moment defining. Another film that only got one nomination is Can I Get a Witness? Sandra Oh did get a nomination for her performance in that film. I really thought we might see some of that young cast get nominations here. Backspot only got 2 nominations. I thought for sure this was going to be in Best Motion Picture. I loved this film. Devery Jacobs not receiving an acting nomination feels completely wrong to me. Another acting snub that is surprising to me is in Seven Veils, which received 6 nominations. This film stars Amanda Seyfried, and I do think she gives a phenomenal performance, but she's nowhere to be found in these nominations. But perhaps the film that I am the most surprised about is Matt and Mara. They did pick up 3 nominations, but no acting nominations for either lead. Feels silly to me. We do have some great acting nominations though that we should shout out because I'm like really thrilled with some of these. Carrie-Anne Moss for Die Alone. I think that's a great pick. Sean Dalton is nominated for Skeet in the performance in a leading role category. He won Best Actor at the Atlantic International Film Festival for this role, but more importantly, he's from my hometown. Anakin-ish represent. Very cool to see him. He got rave reviews for this performance, so I'm very excited that he is in this category. Has there ever been a time in award season history where Cate Blanchett is nominated for acting in a film and it's not the best nomination that film received? Because that happened this year with Rumors getting nominated. Yes, she's nominated for her performance in the film, but perhaps more importantly, art direction got nominated, which means yes, the big brain from TIFF is a nominated Canadian Screen Awards art direction decision. A round of applause to everyone over there. A big round of applause to everyone at Elevation Pictures that made sure the brain made it to TIFF. This was one of my highlights of the festival. It was such a fun photo op. It was so cool to see it in person after seeing the film. And I hope the brain walks the red carpet at the Canadian Screen Awards. I think that would be a hoot. One story of note, which I think is really interesting, is the Cronenberg family dynasty continuing. So Caitlin Cronenberg's film Humane got some nominations, which makes her the 3rd Cronenberg in 3 years consecutively to get a nomination. So Brandon, of course, nominated last year for Infinity Pool. David Cronenberg nominated in 2023 for Crimes of the Future. Of course, he's nominated again this year for his film with 9 nominations. Humane got mixed reviews, but overall, I thought there were some really great performances in that film. We don't see any of those performances make it into those lead categories, which I was a little bit surprised by. Although I say that, and I don't think I would have picked any of the performances in Humane over some of the other snubs I mentioned, like Amanda Seyfried or Matt Johnson or Devry Jacobs. Honestly, I wouldn't have picked them over Rachel Sennett or Caleb Heron in I Used to Be Funny. But what do I know? I'm just a commentator that watches this like a hawk every year. So back to our screaming, crying, throwing up. I want to break this up by talking about the story of the nominations that made me sob in the digital categories. Everybody's Meg. 4 nominations. Ooh, I have goosebumps even just saying that. That's why I'm wearing a sweater. I don't know if you can tell. Hey Old Friend Productions created this show and filmed it in Halifax. So obviously your girl's gonna eat it up. But more importantly, Miss Caitlin at the helm of this project is one of the most badass creators in this country. She is digging shovels into the ground and making it happen for us. So let's hear from the co-creator herself, Caitlin, about these nominations, about the chaos happening in LA as she woke up to all of this news, and what's next for Everybody's Meg. Hello! I was just raving about you and your work.
Thank you. Oh my God. I was trying to figure out how to hop on here, but I'm so friggin' overwhelmed and like so excited.
I'm so happy for you. Look, I literally have your Instagram up right now because I wanted to get everything right, so you couldn't have popped in at a better moment. Oh my God, I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so happy I'm here. I can't believe it.
Okay, tell me everything. So also, thank you for jumping on in the midst of your celebrations. I'm so happy for you and so happy that we could chit chat for a minute. You just woke up.
Me too. I'm in LA, and so I woke up and I thought someone had died. My phone is like blowing up, and immediately I'm like such a worrisome maritime mom in my heart. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? And it's just like, congrats, congrats. And it's my last night. I'm actually leaving. I have to pack. Like, I got to get out the door in 30 minutes. And my best friend was in bed with me, and I was like, Shayna, what is going on? And she was like beaming. She's like, you did it. Like, you did it. And I was like, did what? And it was a total like shock. Was I having my Florence Pugh moment? Remember that picture of Florence Pugh?
Yes. Oh my God.
It just, it's like awards, of course. It's like, they're not the be all and end all, but like everyone worked so friggin' hard on this show. Such a small micro budget. Everybody in Nova Scotia like fucking flowing up the phone right now. And like, of
Absolutely.
course, like Becky, Maddie, and I, like we started this whole project as a short film years ago, and then like to be here is just so cool. And my producers, Mel and Terry Lynn, like they just jumped on and helped us like turn this into like a real production. So it's just so validating and so exciting. And what am I gonna wear? What am I gonna
What? Okay, we have so much we have to figure out, but we have some time, so it's okay. We can come back to the outfits.
wear? Yeah.
Um, It's so cool to see all of you get nominated. I feel like that's also so rare. Like sometimes a project gets nominated and everyone celebrates, but all three of you, I was so happy to see Becky nominated for editing because I think that's one of like my favorite edits of television from last year. It was so wild what you guys achieved in that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she so deserved it. And she also like she made the song that we do the spin episode too as well. Like so that's a cool thing when you have a co-creator who's also your editor. It's like they're involved so early and I think you can really feel that in the show. You know, and like Maddie and I co-writing, but her being the lead and me being the director, like you just can really like there's just this feeling of all of us and all of our magic like just integrated to the whole show. And so I agree like also something about being nominated in writing, directing and editing, it feels like it's the whole process of filmmaking, you
Hmm.
know? So you're like,
Hmm.
yes, like I feel like it's all been acknowledged in such a cool way.
Yeah, you got your like trifecta. It's all there.
Yeah.
All angles of everyone's Meg are nominated. So much
Yeah.
so that you even made the official press release. I don't know if you saw that. You're in like the top nominated projects under digital. It's
I
crazy.
I saw that only because I haven't even opened the actual website yet, Liz. I'm just like, you messaged me people and I was like, and yeah, and then someone sent me that. I was like, oh my gosh. And it does just feel like, you know, we're such a small budget show. We had no budget for marketing. Like we had no budget for a PR person. Like it feels so validating that it's the work is really speaking to people. And that, yeah, it just that feeling of, you know, I just feel like we are like the underdog in like the most beautiful way. And I feel like Meg, our lead character, is like the underdog in so many ways, but she does like rise above always. And it kind of feels like very poetic to like what's happening for us
Totally.
and also our lead character.
But it's also like y'all are pushing against this brick wall of like women creating and leading their own comedy and doing it in their own budget and doing it in their own way. So the fact that you said yes to yourselves and you made the show happen and you're going for season 2 and you have all this momentum now from season 1, I'm like just applauding. I'm like slow clapping over here for you guys. You fucking did that for everyone.
Thank you. And you're so right. Because I do think, like, especially like my production company, Hey Old Friend, it's all about like funny, feel good, female driven. And that's in this show. It's like your key roles producers, writer, director, editor, all women, like all incredibly brilliant, smart, funny, kind hearted. You know, it's just really special. And of course, our cast is all female leading. Like, and we work with amazing men too. Let's not forget about the amazing men. We love
Allies.
them. We
Allies.
love them. Allies. Like Kevin Fraser, our DP, absolutely smashed this show. Like there's so much amazing talent from so many people. But yeah, it being female forward and this being like the first big production with Hailed Friend also, and to be getting CSAs, being like, people are hungry for it. You know, and you were at
Yes.
Shenanigans and the screening
Hmm.
of it we did, and you can see that there is a thirst in Canada and beyond for this. And it just feels like these nominations are so validating. So let's bring home a win. Let's bring
Let's
home a
bring
win.
a home win. Everyone vote for Everybody's Meg. Here's
Do it.
my last question for you. When are you doing season 2? Because is it in the middle of Canadian Screen Awards season? Are y'all gonna have to all be on a Porter flight to Toronto to get there and then get home to keep going? Like, what's going
Porter,
on?
Porter needs to sponsor us. Porter, you hear it? We're going to be shooting probably. We're right now. Our outside dates are like end of May, beginning of June, but I'm hoping it'll be now beginning of June after the CSAs, and we're also waiting on
Hmm.
to hear back from the Screen Nova Scotia Awards. So I hope that we also get some love over there. But yeah, it'll be right after all of this. But Maddie and I are like deep in the writing right now of season 2, so it's even so cool for us to be nominated as writers together and being like this is good. This is good. You know, like, of course, when you're by yourself, it can feel like you're in such a vacuum, but then it's really cool when the world and your
Yes.
country like recognizes how hard you're working.
100%. Well, I hope you're flying the hardware home to Halifax. I hope Toronto Billy Bishop Airport is ready to get those trophies through the security scanners. Let's bring it home.
Get ready, baby. I love it.
Let me take you back to my first ever TIFF. I think it was in 2022. Women in Film and Television Toronto, aka WIFT TO. Every year at TIFF, hosts an incredible mixer where everyone in town gets together. And there's a group of us that met at that event a few years back that have found each other every TIFF since at this event. And we've talked about like the things we're working on, the things we're manifesting for our careers, the things that we want to achieve. And I met Mads at this unintentional little dinner that we have now had many years since. And seeing her go from someone trying to break into the industry to someone with multiple nominations across multiple projects this year, not just for Everybody's Meg, but also in supporting comedy. I have goosebumps. I'm so happy for her. She is one of the funniest comedic actresses in Canada, and she's getting her flowers. We love to see it. I don't even know how to be in the presence of a 3-time Canadian Screen Award nominee.
You're so funny,
3!
dude.
How
I
are you
know.
gonna
What
hold
a
them all in your
great.
hands when you win? Like you're gonna do a Taylor Swift.
It's so crazy. Like, what a weird, because it's also so weird as an actor because you do stuff like 2 years ago and then nothing happens and you're like, oh, whatever. And then stuff happens later and you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot that that's how it works. It's
And now you're
so
here and you're like
weird.
the belle of the ball. You're like it's all happening at once.
Definitely not the belle of the
Sorry.
ball vibes right now. I'm like, got like massive, like, I haven't washed my hair in 6 days, so that's good.
Real. No, that's real. That's real as hell, dude. Honestly, like I feel like I've lived 12 lives in the last 7 hours of trying to like get all of this together. So, but that's kind of the vibe of the show too, and that's why I think it's resonated with so many people is everybody's Meg is not about perfection. It's about like the life we're actually living.
I know. It's so special to me, like, because obviously, like, working on it with everybody was just such a great experience, but like the actual story of it too is so many different elements of people that like I know personally and kind of everyone in their 30s that's like struggling. I feel like we really got to explore that in like a very authentic way. So, yeah, it's really special
Yeah.
for that reason, Like it's
And you're
so
nominated. Yeah, you're nominated not only as Meg, but like as a writer on this.
yeah.
Like the whole team is getting representation for why this show is so freaking good. The writing, the editing, the directing, the acting, like it
It's
all kind of came
crazy.
together here.
I know, we're such a
It's
little
so
team
fucking good.
too. Like we're so
Caitlin was
tiny.
saying it's like the micro budget in Halifax of the Canadian Screen Awards with 4 nominations is like that arc for y'all is real good.
Insane. Like, honestly, was not expecting it. Was just like, whatever, Hail Mary. And so I'm so proud of the team, truly. Like, so, so proud. And so stoked to be Canadian right now, too.
Hell yeah. Listen, I think like getting nominated at the Canadian Screen Awards is one thing. I think being recognized for comedic television and comedic digital in Canada is another thing too, because that's kind of like the bread and butter here of what Canada's up to is our comedy scene. And y'all really like struck a
Totally.
chord with this clearly because you made it.
Totally. I mean, comedy's always been like what Canada is known for as having like a really alt comedy scene, which I love. And really for me has been perfect because I've always felt really supported in like doing weird comedy and kind of exploring that sort of side of things, and it really does excite me that it's being recognized and like that there's room for it here because I know there is, but you can get in your head about it, but it's like it's just such great feedback to know that other people find it funny, and like what a great feeling to just like make people laugh and be recognized for it. It's awesome.
I was saying like I was doing the intro for talking about the show, and then like Caitlin jumped on like so quick that I was like, "Oh, I was literally just trying to set this up, and you are now here." But what I was saying in the intro that everyone will hear is how we kind of had a moment a few years ago in our journeys together where we stopped time in a group of women all trying to make it, and we kind of said what we wanted out loud to each other and held space in a very like forecasting time way before that was a thing. And now, like, look at you, here you are, you did all
Dude,
the things that you said you wanted to do. Like, this show is so big and you're 3 times nominated in a year, and we're here
well,
together on the podcast.
I was gonna say, same to you. Like, you have just been growing like crazy, and you're doing the Lord's work truly for Canadian performers, Canadian projects. Like, it's very
Yeah.
exciting to watch your career and watch you grow in a space that's so desperately needed here, and like making it fun and making it pop culture, and like Canada doesn't have to be boring and weird content that no one relates to. Like, there is a
Real
fun,
talk.
right? Like, there is a fun scene here, and like I'm so excited for you to be exploring all of it and having such good
I'm
feedback.
excited for
It's
us.
just it's so exciting.
I'm
Yeah.
excited for us. I'm
Yeah,
excited for us, man. I think like it's so rare to like find people that want to shake things up the way that we've wanted to shake things up. And I'm just like,
totally.
the first thing I checked when these nominations came out was like, did everybody's Meg do it? Because like
Uh,
to me, your show symbolizes so much more than just like it's great and it's funny and the writing is great and the editing is great. Like, it is kind of a sledgehammer at a brick wall of like, no, we're weird and we're here, and like we're not gonna candy coat, like sugar coat anything. We're just gonna like actually talk about what this industry and life is like without any kind of barrier. And I
totally.
think like, hell yeah, get that message out there.
Dude, thank you so much. Yeah, what a great feeling. Like, it's so nice to not have to compromise any of the weird jokes you want to do. There was like one joke that was cut because it was a little bit too dicey, but that's
Yeah.
normal. And other than that, it's just like
I was gonna say
all
one joke.
I know, literally one that they were like, and it was period related. So it was like, I get
Hmm.
it. But
Why
like
not? No.
everything else,
Hmm.
yeah, we got all the weirdness in, and we have season 2 coming, which is going to be like weirder for sure. So it's just, yeah, it's such a good feeling to be like, oh shit, the stuff that you make when you're actually having fun and it's stuff you find funny, other people find funny too. Like, oh, what a
Yeah.
concept. Yeah, it's great.
Listen, having things resonate is like half the battle, but y'all achieved that from episode 1. So I'm
Thank
so freaking
you.
happy for you. I'm so stoked for you.
Thank
3
you.
nomination time
Crazy.
actor, writer extraordinaire Maddie Foley, everybody.
Thank you so much. You're the best.
There's so much more to talk about in the digital nominations, but this podcast is already so long and we have not even talked about what's happening in TV. There are so many great acting nominations. I feel like I could talk about every single acting nomination across TV this year, but it would take literally all day. So please trust over the coming weeks, we will deep dive into these categories and talk about these performances. If I didn't talk about your fave today, leave it in the comments. Let me know in the late night scrolling group chat on Instagram so I can flag it for future episodes. First and foremost, Canadian Screen Award history has been made yet again by a show climbing the ranks of most nominated show ever in a single year. Spot number 1, spot number 2, still occupied by Schitt's Creek, but we have a new bronze place, a new third place in this conversation, and it's going to Law and Order Toronto. Of course it is. If you're not watching Law and Order Toronto, what are you doing? It's so funny. It's so good. It is so fun to watch all these Canadian stars that you know from other shows guest star on an episode here or there. They received 20 nominations. I'm not surprised. It feels overdue that we even have this show happening in Canada. One of the reasons why I love supporting the Law and Order franchise is because all the guest star roles that are necessary to make that show happen. You heard about this in the SAG Awards this year, the amount of people that got their start or got residual checks because they had guest star roles. It's one of those shows that opens doors for people to have their first speaking role on camera or to have a recurring role for 2 or 3 episodes or even a season. It's so important to support shows that do that in our industry. Law and Order is doing that in our industry. I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled. Long may they reign as a Canadian Screen Award nominee. Speaking of long reigning shows, I'm so excited for Children Ruin Everything. 12 nominations. This show is So good. It has become such a bedrock of Canadian comedy. Now, if my math is right, we should see them at the Canadian Screen Awards next year because the final season just finished airing at the end of February, I think, start of March, in the past few weeks. So it shouldn't be the end of their time at the Canadian Screen Awards, but it is definitely an emotional time as the show has formally wrapped on air. Last year, we saw Best Lead Performer in a Comedy Series go to Megan Rath for her leading performance in this show. This was her second time being nominated and her first time winning in this category. She's nominated again this year. I think she should win again this year, and if not her, I do hope that it goes to her on-screen scene partner, her on-screen husband, Mr. Aaron Adams. But Megan is so good in this show. She's one of our strongest comedic voices on television. She's got some big projects coming up, recent Deadline headlines. Hello, Megan. I'm really excited to see what she does now that this show has wrapped, but I do think that what she's done in this role is so singular. I hope she wins again. You know, I didn't know if this day was ever gonna come, so I'm really just gonna enjoy soaking in this one. Let's take a deep breath. A deep breath out. Winona Earp. Winona Earp is back, okay? I've seen Winona Earp come back for this TV movie on Tubi was one of the greatest announcements that came to Canadian media. I was so friggin' excited to see this get picked up. Everyone say thank you, Tubi. Everyone say thank you to Tubi for making this happen. They received 9 nominations, as they absolutely should. I will never, ever get over what happened with that show. But this feels like a little sprinkle of like, you know, love to all the fans. So huge win for all of us with this. I will say another question mark I have goes to another to be made for TV film. Okay, I don't know if this film is going to be nominated next year. I don't know if it missed that cutoff or if it just wasn't nominated at all. So again, big question mark there. But if you follow me on Instagram, y'all know I love the Sidelined film. Yes, it's that movie that's adapted from the Wattpad fanfiction that stars Noah Beck. Okay, I don't care what reviewers say. I don't care what critics say. I loved that film. Nothing gets me going more than a mid-budget high school rom-com. It is the backbone of supporting young Hollywood. It is the backbone of supporting our film industry in Canada. We love films like this for the stability that they bring to the communities that they shoot in. I'm so friggin' excited to see them shooting Sideline 2 right now, director Justin Wu from Toronto. I really wanted to see this film nominated in these categories. So again, I genuinely have not figured out yet if it was not nominated, if it could be nominated next year. That's a big question mark to me. But either way, I can't believe I'm saying this, okay? I think Noah Beck deserves a Canadian Screen Award nomination, okay? I do. I loved what he did with this high school football player role. He had some deep work he had to do to actually make us believe the emotional stakes this guy was going through, okay? The plot is one thing. The performance, I thought, was actually very moving at times. Noah Beck, I can't believe I'm saying this. Yes, I'm fighting for a Noah Beck Canadian Screen Award nomination. Okay, if it's not coming from this first film, Sideline 2, I'm on your campaign team. I want to see it happen. I'm getting heated, but that shows you how much I love the mid-budget rom-com film, okay? Tubi, call me. We got to figure this out for the next Canadian Screen Awards, okay? Okay, I got to stop talking about this because I just accidentally tossed my mic and knocked over all of my makeup. So, you know, that's on me. That's on me getting too heated about Noah Beck. He's not even Canadian, but as we know, not only Canadians get nominated for Canadian Screen Awards, why should Noah Beck be excluded from the fun? Okay, where were we? Another show I love, Allegiance, season 1 picking up 8 nominations. Not surprising to me at all to see both Enrico and Supinder nominated for their performances. They are incredible in this show. I know some of you are waiting to binge watch all of season 2, and to that I say it's much more fun to watch it week by week, so I'm not going to spoil what happens off the top of season 2. But I will say it does hurt a little bit to not see our boy get a supporting actor nomination, but it's also one of the toughest categories to get nominated in at the Canadian Screen Awards. So Enrico's going to hold down the fort for both of them. God, these TV categories are tough. Canada knows how to make some good television. And on that note, let's talk about Letterkenny. Okay, Letterkenny receiving 5 nominations, including Best Ensemble Performance. However, I do find this confusing. I don't know if the tone of the show has just like exhausted voters, but like I thought this particular season would see all of our lead cast back in those lead actor categories, supporting actor categories, and yet only the ensemble. I do think there's some of the best comedic performances happening on Canadian television right now, and I would extend that also to Shoresy, which received a few nominations. That's a little question mark that I have as well. There are 2 competitions that I'm really eager to see the outcome of. One is in television, and it's between Canada's Drag Race and Canada's Drag Race Canada versus the World. I'm really curious because those shows, when they're nominated, will they eat the voting pool that normally votes for Canada's Drag Race up, making another show in the category that's not drag win? Or do they have a wide enough voting base to not like eat all their own votes up and actually send one of the 2 shows to the stage to win? We know that Canada's Drag Race loves to win big at the Canadian Screen Awards. They are in fact a favorite. So I'm really curious about how that one's gonna play out, folks. Time will tell. Okay, rhyming off a few more of my favorite nominations here. The Office Movers is in Best Comedy Series. I can't believe that's their only nomination, but I am so happy to see them on the board. Late Bloomer, 8 nominations. This is one of those shows that like everyone who's seen it knows how good it is, and anyone who hasn't seen it hasn't heard of it yet. I haven't met a single person who's watched this show who didn't absolutely love it. I don't know why more people haven't seen it, so put it on your watch list. It's streaming on Crave. It is so good. Swan Song received 5 nominations. This is the documentary series about Karen Kane directing Swan Lake. You may have seen it as a documentary. You may have seen it as the miniseries on CBC. It's been out in a few different forms. They are both great. I'm excited to see it nominated. But now we have to talk about the real throwing up of it all, which is my favorite comedy show of 2024. And if you follow Andrew Fung on Instagram, you may have seen this comment from me. If this show had not received at minimum 12 nominations, I would have had to have done an entire podcast episode about why that was wrong. But thank God the voters agreed, because Run the Burbs has 12 nominations. I think that Run the Burbs hit a stride in its last season, unfortunately, that the whole show is building towards. It was so much fun to watch every week. Tone and voice and performance, like firing on all cylinders of what makes Canadian comedy great. And it got canceled, which was devastating. This is one of the big problems that happens every year with the Canadian Screen Awards. And this is not the Canadian Screen Awards fault. It's just a statement about what's happening in Canadian television right now. It seems like every year we get to the Canadian Screen Awards and we see these top nominated shows like The Porter, like Bria Mack Gets a Life, like Run the Burbs this year, that are firing on all cylinders, that are so beloved by Canadians, that are so good, and they are either canceled before the Canadian Screen Awards, canceled right after the Canadian Screen Awards, or canceled before the Canadian Screen Awards get nominated in the case of Run the Burbs. So you're telling me we're all gonna go to the Canadian Screen Awards and we're gonna celebrate the heck out of this incredible season, this incredible cast, these 12 nominations for Run the Burbs, and the show is just done. It's so frustrating. The Porter received like 18 or 19 nominations. It won Best Dramatic Series. Doing those interviews on the red carpet, it was like, how can a show be this good? How can this cast be so stacked? The writing of that show being so unbelievably good. If you've watched The Porter, like, you know that's one of the best drama series that's come out in Canada in the 2020s. Like, it's going to be, when we look back at this decade of television, one of the best, and yet canceled. And yet the best comedy series, Bria Mack Gets a Life, gets canceled. And yet Run the Burbs, 12 nominations, canceled before we even get to the Screen Awards. It makes me upset. It makes me furious. And I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. You also can't erase the fact that all of these shows are uplifting marginalized voices and communities and history in this country. It does not feel good, y'all, to see this happen again and again and again. So yes, we will celebrate the hell out of Run the Burbs because it was the best season of the show that got this nomination list, okay? But I'm not gonna sit here and celebrate it without recognizing how crazy it is to be celebrating a show that deserved more time as it hit its stride and did not get it. That's wild. That is just does not sit well. Does not sit well with me. Nothing gets me fired up more than good Canadian television just hitting its stride and then getting cut from the airwaves. It's not cool. One of the last stories I want to talk about is in the documentary categories. We have the Tragically Hip No Dress Rehearsal, 7 nominations. Y'all know me. Y'all know I was raised on the hip. You know how much it meant to me to be on that red carpet, to meet the hip and talk to them and wear the Queen's jacket. Like, I'm so happy to see them get 7 nominations, but I will say this is also the second big competition that I am watching. And it's happening in such a niche category, but like when I saw it, I just like froze in my scrolling and was like, oh no. How do you put a documentary series that has so much writing and archival footage and just like hundreds of hours of editing this whole masterpiece together? And how do you put that beside what to me was one of the most moving interviews in Canadian pop culture history, which was Adrienne Arsenault interviewing Celine Dion in the I Will Sing Again interview? How do you nominate those two things side by side? Like that Celine interview, I edited a whole version of like Celine singing at the opening of the Olympics with her talking in that interview, and it blew up millions of views. And then Olympics hit it with like a copyright strike. So I don't think it's anywhere on the internet now. But if y'all saw that edit, like I cried making that. I've watched that interview so many times. I've cried every single time I've watched it. It's one of the best of the best interviews in like Canadian pop culture history. Adrienne Arsenault is like one of my personal favorite interviewers in Canada. She's one of those people that like if I could sit down with her for 2 minutes, I would have 10 bazillion questions to ask her. I think her work is so phenomenal. I don't know how you pick between a moment that important with a history that is so important to who Canada is and what Canadian pop culture is. Like it's apples and oranges. Like I don't know how you pick between those two things. You just pick something else that's nominated. To me, those are two of the most important things that have happened in like Canadian pop culture recorded history. So I don't envy the voters that have to pick between those two, because that's to me that is the hardest choice to make this entire Screen Awards. All in all, looking at these nominations, another great year in Canadian media, another great year in Canadian pop culture. We didn't even have a chance to get into the Olympics of it all, which swept a bunch of the nominations as well. There's so much more to unpack in here. The good news is we have about 6-7 more weeks to dig in to all of these nominations and all of these shows. So if there are nominations that you're excited about, please let me know in the comments or on Instagram so that I can make sure I'm covering the shows and movies and TV and everything that y'all want to see. This is the time of year that fills my battery back up to 100% because I'm reminded of just how clever and smart and scrappy Canadian media is. No one gets to these awards without a fight. You heard Caitlin talk about that, how this show that's now one of the most nominated digital shows of the year was built on a micro budget, how they made this happen out of a dream for so many years. Like that is the story of the Canadian Screen Awards. This is about like keeping our industry alive. This is about all the cool work that happens every day in this country, about the crews that make these incredible shows come to life, about the talent that's building their dreams here at home, coast to coast to coast. I hope that in this episode you found some nominations to add to your own watch list. There's going to be much more to come. Also, a very special press junket happening today that's going to be coming out here and on the Dropout Drop, and it's a double whammy interview that's happening. So some special news to look forward to in the coming weeks. Can't tell you what it is, but I am excited to get this one in the ring for y'all. Next week on Late Night Scrolling, we're going to wrap up everything that's going down this weekend at the Junos. So make sure to follow on Apple Podcasts so that you get a notification when the Junos episode goes up. And if you feel like leaving a 5-star rating and review, gang, we are in the top 10 entertainment news podcasts in Canada. You're only helping us shoot up further and further up the charts, which is wild. It's wild. I'm processing while I'm doing all of this. I just want to keep making the best quality Canadian pop culture commentary I can for y'all, and trust these nominations this year at the Canadian Screen Awards. Ooh, the stories that are going to come from this. It's going to be a fun one. I can't wait to break it down with all of you here on Late Night Scrolling. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.